Hi, welcome to the Pre-Chiro podcast. My name is Ben. I'm a chiropractor. And today I have a chiropractor broadcasting out of Australia. Joe, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with any prospective students out there, chiropractic students, and anyone considering this career path for themselves. So can we get started with you just sharing a little bit about your background and what initially attracted you to the profession?
I can safely say that there was no miracle, except you could define it as a philosophical awakening at some point, and for some reason, at the tender age of 18 or thereabouts, I heard about chiropractic. My brother's one of his good friends was studying, and I said, "What are you studying?" He said, "I'm studying chiropractic." What the heck is that? It's the art, science, and philosophy of the enhancement of the human potential through adjustment of the spine, because the spine is connected to the spinal cord via the nervous system and up through the spinal column to the brain, housed by the cranium. And he said, when you disrupt it at any point, you could get a disease or a condition or a problem. And I went, really? That kind of clicks, because, at that point, every time I'd gone to the doctor, it was some dude sitting at the other side of a desk and prescribing something in a fairly disinterested, disconnected way. And I didn't have anything much against a doctor, but my instinct at that point in life as a young man was that it didn't really turn me on very much. When I listened to some of the music that was on at the time, that really revved me up. That made me feel good. So I got into music. If I read something nice, I picked up a book and I thought, wow, that's cool. Animal Farm, 1984. These are things that kind of, you thought, oh, there's some truth in that, or something that's aroused something within me. So therefore, the chiropractic thing was presented to me in a nutshell. And then I said, of course, can I try this stuff? And he said, come along to the office and I'll adjust you. I had an adjustment. I felt taller. I felt freer. I felt in sync with my body. I thought an awareness. That's what I thought. Oh, I'm aware of something going on here. Anyway, also, the small miracle was that my occasional headaches never came back. So it was basically a philosophical introduction. And then he did one more thing. He said, come and watch this video. And guess who it was? It was this guy with a wacky hairdo, not quite as wacky, big sideburns. And he would say, all the scientists and the doctors in the world couldn't heal a blade of grass. So that was Reggie Gold. And I was indoctrinated by Reggie. And that was the end of the old me.
And just for any students out there, Reggie Gold put together a series of audio tapes, which have been converted into CDs and are now probably going to be available online at some point or another through Reggie Gold's website. I definitely recommend them. They were transformational for me in my education as well. And so carry on. So you go into chiropractic school with this new awareness or this indoctrination.
Not exactly.
No.
Not exactly. Took me about 10 years. Deep thinker I am. Took me 10 years. It takes me 10 years to make any major change in my life, Ben. I have to ponder it. So what happened was, I was heavily into music at that time. And then I met my first wife. And she was a CA. And short story is, she encouraged me to go into chiropractic. Her name was Lynn. And I started school at Sydney College of Chiropractic. And then I did a Bachelor of Science at New South Wales University. And how did I get to Palmer College from Australia? Well, there was you've got to compress that into look, it's a horse race. So if the odds are you listen to Reggie Gold by chance or whatever you want to call it, you're going to kind of grasp onto a philosophy there. If I had listened to, say, I don't know, Joe Jancy or something, the thing is, I ended up at Palmer, and it's a horse race. If you're running a race at Palmer College, you're likely to end up with something resembling the Palmer philosophy. If you run the race in a college that's not so philosophical, not so technique savvy, and not so whatever, you will go a slightly different direction. And that's, I guess, where all the fanning out of the chiropractic styles ends up. And that's fine, because life is a whole thing. It's not a tiny thing. But I ended up at Palmer College in 1994, and it happened to be around the time of Centennial, so I was very lucky, 1995. And what happened was, I found that most people that went through Palmer also had a great passion for what they do. They have like a mission in their life. And also they kind of cotton on to upper cervical care. Now, at the time, my wife, she fell over, smacked her head on the street in a downtown Davenport, and we weren't far from the college. And another chance thing happened. Of course, there's nothing by chance, and we had to seek some excellent chiropractic care, and we went to a guy called Dr. Vern Hagen, and he said, "This is how I adjust the atlas," and he was an SOT master. So I'd heard he was, D. Jarnett's right-hand man. He was an SOT master, but he adjusted the atlas specifically, a la Dr. Roy Sweat. And then I ended up doing upper cervical specific, and I've practiced and teach it in Australia for nearly 25 years now. So the point is, if you seek to be in the company of certain chiropractors, you'll eventually pretty much pick up what they've picked up to a certain degree, and then you express it in your own style. So go with what you're interested in, go with what fascinates you, what rings true to you, but seek it out a little bit too.
As someone who has been connected to the upper cervical lens of chiropractic and approaching the body from that angle, specifically within the context of chiropractic, you mentioned Dr. Roy Sweat. Was he the founder of Atlas Orthogonal, or was he?
He was, and still is, and still works at 93 years of age. I saw him 2 years ago, and I keep in touch with him. He is the founder, and he's still the boss.
So can we just unpack upper cervical a little bit? There's obviously a central core commonality, no matter what form of upper cervical you're practicing. And I would say that that's rooted in the science, obviously the philosophy, and then the art is where it takes many forms. But can you just give us a bit of an overview on upper cervical chiropractic for people that are really just hearing about this for the first time?
There's no doubt that there are many articulations in the body. There is no doubt that personally I adjust full spine. There is no doubt that there's 24 movable areas in the spine and even in the cranium. Cranial is a wonderful discipline. Chiropractors get into all sorts of wonderful things. Even visceral adjusting was an art form in the old days, and people continue it today. Mm-hmm. However, bang for your buck. I like fast cars, but I can't afford a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. Not yet. Mm-hmm. Where do you go for your bang for your buck? You find a car that can do what it can do in the minimal cost and the minimal. And I think BJ also said the one who fixes you up in the minimal time, minimal effort, and the more specific it is, the less impactful does the job. So if you want to get the bang for your buck of the human neurospinal system, it's up here. Mm-hmm. And anything you do below, albeit important, especially if the patient's suffering, especially if the patient has a symptom you do want to address, up here is where it's at. And so that junction, the craniocervical junction, the ability for it to block not only nerve supply, we're finding CSF, we're finding blood. The old osteopath said blood, we said nerve. Who cares? It's now blood, nerve, CSF, and brain function. And therefore, you've got to adjust it specifically. You have a percentage of people out there that you can randomly do a mobilization of the neck and they'll feel great. And then as you see more and more people, that percentage becomes less significant. And you think, oh God, I got that one patient I just can't get right. Another one came in, I just can't get right. If I hone in a more specific way, direction, vectors, then I start thinking mechanics. I start thinking a little bit like these geniuses, Wernthing, Grostic. So you asked me for a rundown. BJ Palmer, he got his ideas a little bit, stole a little bit here and stole a little bit there. God bless him and respect. A guy called Wernthing wrote a book. I have an old copy. Then BJ developed the spinography, which was so important in visualizing and getting a look at these angles and vectors and, curves. Then Grostic refined it to a softer, more specific analysis. Roy Sweat switched from hole-in-one to Grostic. Then there were people like Gregory that then taught the upper cervical in Nuka, done by hand. Roy switched to an instrument with a stylus and an impulse. Then you've got greats like Blair that took even more x-rays and confuses me, but, enhances other people's experience, and they do a great job. Then you got the guys that do it still by old BJ's method, and that's fine too. Knee, chest, head turn. You got all the branches, but what comes to mind is the bang for the buck. If you could do nothing else on a person, what would you do? Adjust their thumb? No, you will probably do that.
Absolutely. For those that are more left brain oriented and want to hear like specific statistics or details, facts, so to speak, that you would see in an anatomy textbook, the muscles in your upper neck at the craniocervical junction have the highest density of mechanoreceptors of any other muscles in the human body. So just off of that, they have more influence and more connection to the brain than any other muscle in the body. And for that reason and that reason alone, they're the most important muscles. However, let's take a step back. So I'm a prospective student. I'm considering chiropractic as a career. I'm thinking that upper cervical sounds really interesting, but we want to also speak to how an upper cervical provider works in the real world. Like what does it look like to be an upper cervical chiropractor in regards to communication? When people come in, they're not familiar. How do you orient somebody to this way of practicing chiropractic?
Virgil Strang used to say, I've treated many people, I've adjusted many people in 50 years or whatever it was. I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of patients I have that understand chiropractic. But I can tell you one thing, they know that I know. So you're always going to have, let's go 80-20. 80% of people that come in really don't know what the hell I do. They might know that I seem to know what I'm talking about. I seem to know what I'm doing with my hands. My office looks okay, or it looks wonderful, whatever. And so they get an energy around you. But 20%, maybe even less, maybe it's the fingers of one hand, like Virgil said, they'll really understand. So, but what I've found is I've had patients who were adjusted by the late, great Stanley Bolton, and she's about 80 something. And she remembers being adjusted by, he used to karate chop me on the back of the neck. Or if they went to someone like, activator technique, they say, oh, he uses that little clicky thing. So they do remember something, but most of them don't really remember the details. But you'll get 1 or 2 or 10 or 100 people that actually want to learn more. They will understand more, and they'll do their own research. In fact, these days, I get young people coming in who have heard someone like Elliot Holtz, who's this bodybuilder that was trained under Paul Chek. And Paul Chek encourages everyone to get their atlas checked. Well, check. How good is that? So they're coming in and they're 18 years old and they're telling me, I think my atlas is out. So here I was saying 80% of people won't get it. But you know what? Maybe I've underestimated the new generation of person who's connected to the internet, who will research their own stuff, and they'll be lifting weights and they'll say, my God, I can't build this one up. This one's big, this one's small. What could it be? And they're telling me. So I often underestimate what my patients really are going to understand. And then there's the people who can understand and don't want to. They just want to feel better. So you've got to be a little bit eclectic about what's out there, not too dogmatic. I always match the energy of what's in front of me. If they want to talk about vectors and forces and the innate intelligence, we'll talk. I'll talk spiritualism if they want, but don't, match them where they're at. If they want to chat about their symptoms, we can talk about that. Ouch. How's that feel? Better? Yep. Okay, that's the limit of it. So what does an upper cervical practice look like? Well, I don't think much different to any others, but we upper cervical like to think we're a bit elitist. And we are a little different. Because some of the fellows that I know and love, they won't touch anything under C1. And that's tough. If you can do that, they're extremely disciplined and their practices are, not small. They get people well. So, and we don't have the science yet to prove which technique works best. We do not, but we should aim to be, in a little running race with each other. Why not? It breeds excellence. I hope that answered some questions.
It absolutely did. And I just want to reflect that you've mentioned a number of names in this interview, Virgil Strang being one of them. He's published a couple of books, I know for sure. And also Reggie Gold has a couple of books. Go and research these names that you're hearing, because these people were contributors throughout the history of chiropractic. We've had so many different people contribute such great work to this profession. And I just want to acknowledge you. I've been on your list for many years. You are one of the people that I always enjoy receiving emails from, because you really investigate anything that's tied into either the politics of the profession, to the research that supports the profession, to just some articles being written in different places from other professions that are about this profession. And so I just want to acknowledge, how did you develop that inside of yourself, that recognition that it's really important, A, to investigate the resources available to us, and then B, to share them with other chiropractors?
Fred Bard's wrote a book.
What was the inspiration behind that, or what's the intention behind that?
I can only answer that with what comes into my brain right now. Fred Bard's wrote a book called Life Without Fear. If you look at chiropractors, maybe this is kind of a future statement. Life without fear. When you are fearful, you'll grab whatever you can that you can secure yourself to quickly. And often in life, we have to. Survival, adaptation. Then what you do is you let go with one hand, and then you reach out with the other hand. And you might say, oh, that feels all right. And then you stumble again and you grab onto what you know. Now, chiropractic philosophy is about doubt more than certainty. When I say that, chiropractors grab onto, no, I'm certain. So I think that's the thing, is here's the paradox. You're so certain that you can let go. How's that? When you fear, you grab onto old traditional values like they're in stone. And if you go back to Palmer College, you can see Dee Dee in stone, Mabel. There's no statue of me there yet, so you've got to grab me in the flesh. But if you're living flesh, you have to doubt and you have to be rooted in something. You don't want to be a universe of chaos, but there's order in chaos. So basically what you do is you grow and you step out and you step back, but you can step out and you can still be tied to the past. We are, but maybe it's not dead, but it's not as relevant as what's happening now. So what you do is you investigate, you look at what's going on. And the philosophy of chiropractic is about, there are some pretty nebulous statements in the green books. Chiropractic is about all things natural. D.D. Palmer, chiropractic is founded on tone. Those two statements you could talk about for 3 weeks each, right? You don't have to be dogmatic about what you do. You've got to be more like a great scientist, someone like Rupert Sheldrake or David Bohm, and who were highly scientific people. But they didn't cringe when they heard something weird and wonderful and different. They put it into their context of what they know, and then they sort of go, well, maybe that has a possibility in X, Y, Z, and in the future we'll know A, B, C. So, I think our greatest crippling feature is our dogmatic approach to things. It's a bit like saying chiropractic is vitalistic. Well, chiropractic isn't vitalistic. I can tell you that right now. Chiropractors are vitalistic. Chiropractic is many things. And why define it? Chiropractic is what chiropractors do. Chiropractic is so alive. Why would you define it? Let's talk about chiropractic philosophy is an open-ended question. So if a student comes to me, they might run away because I'm too questioning. I'm too open. But you know what? There are some grounding tenets, founded on tone, the tone of the neuromuscular skeletal system, founded on the universal forces. There are universal forces. It's obvious that trees stand up and planets revolve. Innate is the internal forces within us that are probably illusory anyway, because we're connected to everything anyway. And we live and die, and we go into the ground or into the air, and we circulate somehow. So it's a big thing, not a small thing. So I think if you can show the world that you do what you do and you don't sway much from it, however your thought process is big around it, it's fine. I mean, a Ford Taurus, I'm talking American now, and a Ford Mustang are two different vehicles, but they're the same thing fundamentally. But to a purist, they'll argue black and blue that one of them's highly superior. And that's what we do in chiropractic. But at the end of the day, a lot of people are talking our language anyway, and we maybe isolate ourselves as chiropractors into this little profession that's really a lot bigger than you think.
Absolutely. That's what we're doing here. We're having a conversation with new audiences that have never considered chiropractic as a path. We're reaching out to the interwebs. So what are some guiding questions that you would recommend a student that's going into chiropractic school use as sort of a guiding principle that they want to perceive their education? What lens should people that are going on to become chiropractors, what lens should they be perceiving their education through as they enter into chiropractic school?
A couple of things coming to mind. One, I'm going to make a statement on evidence-based practice, and I'm going to make a statement on how I did it. Firstly, me. If you get a grade point average of 3 and you pass the exam, you're still going to get the ticket. If you get the GPA of, what's the highest? 4? I don't know. I can't remember.
4.
Are you going to be a better chiropractor? You may get a lot of accolades from your dad and mum, and you'll feel good about yourself. I was looking over my old transcripts the other day for some reason, and I realized I made the dean's list. And I thought, wow, I forgot about that. I honestly forgot that I made the dean's list. Maybe it's not such a big deal. However, I did what I had to do academically at a basic pass rate. And then it allowed me to have time to read Palmer, Barge, Strang, and most importantly, I went to doctors of chiropractic and spoke with them. And then I worked out the ones I resonated with and left alone the ones I didn't. So as a student, it's important for you to get out in the field. I actually worked in offices all through my education, not in America, but in Australia. What's the term? Pick your brains. Pick the brains of someone you respect or like the way they practice or even like the way they look. Have a look at what they're doing. Learn what's happening in the real world. And then, you know, your books will start to look a bit more realistic, or you'll throw that book away. But I think, one, talk to people who are successful in your paradigm, in your feel-good way, and also evidence-based practice. Realize that you could do eternal, infinitesimal amounts of research. Now, one thing as a student, I'll tell you, I looked at everything. I studied research. I looked at Biderman's book. I looked at, Kirk Erickson's book about the Atlas is probably the best compendium out there. But I went to the Palmer Library when it was all paper and microfiche and all that stuff. Now it's all, the world is at your feet. You can look up anything almost. So I looked at the literature. I studied, the cranial bowl and I studied, like I said, cranial work. I studied upper cervical. So the point is, though, you could do infinitesimal amounts of research and get nowhere. And that's the fallacy of what's happening now is, well, there's not enough evidence that spinal manipulation, blah, blah, blah. You know what? There's tons of evidence for nearly every stance you want to take in this crazy life. Now, learn your levels of credibility, learn your levels of excellence in evidence. Nonetheless, Harvey Lillard getting better from an adjustment is still evidence. How significant is it? Well, it has an aura around it, but it's not enough. However, after 125 years or whatever it is, you know, there's been a mounting evidence. And then you realize, you turn around, that spinal fusion surgery has basically never been subjected to a double-blind placebo-controlled study. I think the first one's in process right now. And you think, well, they did all right. Who's the richest highly paid surgeon and a doctor in the world? Is probably a spinal surgeon. How did they do it without a placebo? Well, you know, and that's where all the lies in medical the realm come in, where they say we're unscientific and yet, they're okay. So basically, two things: get out in the field, talk to chiropractors. You're one of them that's doing a tremendous job, and I'm definitely going to promote this webcast.
Yeah, I
then
mean,
the other thing,
there's been a ton of value that you provided right there in providing context for how you begin to differentiate the literature that has high credibility versus low credibility. That's a skill set that we never really learn in school, and I believe it's a supplemental skill set that's become even more valuable in the world, with so much information being propagated from so many different sources, that you really need to be able to differentiate what is something that's speaking to you, and how quality is the research, say, how was it designed, what were the methods, what were the variables. But what I also hear you really saying just now is that observation of demonstration in an office setting and getting experience actually receiving care is one of the most crucial pieces to a prospective student's path, that you can't make a truly informed decision unless you've been in an office, received care from multiple different types of chiropractic approaches, and found out what resonates with you and said to yourself, this path makes sense to me. I love what it allows me to do. It's worked for me. I see the value and benefit of it, and I want to go deep with the sciences, or I really want to just dedicate myself to this philosophy of life that chiropractic offers. So I just want to thank you.
You just made me think of one thing. When the doctor goes through a medicine, they go through the rounds in a hospital and they observe everything that's done, and they imbibe themselves in the hospital experience. and they see real patients. However, when I follow Roy Sweat around his clinic and do like hospital rounds with him, at the end of the day, I can receive what he's giving. But the medical guys, they can't get an appendectomy or a cardiac unless they're sick. Whereas the difference is we can do the rounds with these doctors and then receive it at the end of the day if we're out of alignment or subluxated.
Beautiful. Yes. I've received amazing adjustments that really shifted my consciousness of what was possible with chiropractic. And it still today serves me with the people that I get to take care of, in just my trust in what's possible when you just leverage this intelligence within and really just take care of somebody. So can you speak a little bit to the present state of chiropractic in regards to, we have tons of resources now. We have a bunch of literature. If you're somebody that really needs to support what you do and speak to people with research, but can you speak a little bit about how far we've come as a profession, and also the potential of what we can accomplish if we begin to, what I believe, this is just a side note, I believe the main subluxation in our profession is a lack of pre-chiro, is that disconnect between our profession and the prospective student. I believe we need to educate the educated people, get chiropractors on college campuses worldwide and into the health centers so that they can begin to relate, but obviously they need to be chiropractors. Anyway, can you just speak to the current state of the profession, specifically in the context of Australia? If I'm an Australian chiropractic student and I'm watching this right now, how can you help orient them to the opportunities that are available to them, and also give them some real specific advice, because we're talking about that part of the world, and that's where you're at.
You can approach this question a number of ways. One is to get depressed. And it is true, as you get older, I'm over 50, well over 50 now, you see things through the dark rather than through the light as a youngster. That has advantages, looking through the dark, because you don't kind of jump off the edge too quickly. The answer is that let's say that chiropractic's lost its way. Let's just assume that. If it has, which a lot of the old guys I talk to and gals, maybe it has, but anything through history is carried by a small, it's like during the worst times in history, World War II, there was a resistance army and they were underground. I don't know, I wasn't there, but I'm not that old. So, but there were people who carried the torch of truth. They may have been delusional, or just plain, had nothing else better to do. But nonetheless, they carried some little truth through a period of darkness. So in the end, it doesn't matter whether chiropractic's up or down. Is there some, Virgil Strang again comes to mind. He used to say, in 200 years, I don't care whether subluxation or adjustment exists, as long as someone is removing it and preventing the subluxation and, seeing people, no matter what they're called, as long as it's being done by somebody. Now, the problem I see is that there was a discussion recently taking at gender bias in medicine. What's a gender bias? Bartholin's glands in a female, things like that. Things named after, in the female body, named after men, God forbid. So there's kind of a generification of things going on. Spinal manipulative therapy, upper cervical or craniocervical specific, let's take names out of things that are old or have connotations that we don't like or are just plain negative. So I found that in a lot of Australian colleges now, there is one trying to start up that's trying to base itself on traditional philosophy and methods, and God bless them. I hope they go forward. But the general education here is, take the technique gurus out. Don't call it Thompson technique. Call it drop piece. Don't call it activator, call it instrument assisted. Don't call it atlas orthogonal, call it percussion wave, whatever. So we're trying to remove things from the curriculum in that way. But that's okay. But the problem is that a lot of the technique gurus don't get invited on campus anymore. Now, I happen to say Palmer College was an immensely wonderful experience for me, not only because I've got friends to this day that I will speak to today from the USA and all around the world, Canada, Germany, wherever, but all the technique gurus came on campus. And you could go to their stuff, or you could, go to the soda fountain. But they were respected as pioneers and instigators of the technique. And so I think that, we should be letting people on campuses, but the university, and let's step out of chiropractic, talk to someone like Jordan Peterson. The problem with universities today is huge. There's no innovation. There's no free thought. You can't say this. You can't say that. So it's not just chiropractic that's unique. We're not. The whole world is going through what I perceive as a very subtle dark age. But there will be those that carry the torch. You and I, our friends, even and look, and that's not to say that contrarian thought is unwarranted. The problem with subluxation summits and things like that is you've got to invite your friends and your enemies. You've got to have a big, broad-based discussion and throw lettuces and tomatoes at each other, but be nice about it. But hey, I want to throw a lettuce at you. It's not going to hurt too much, but I am going to wallop you with this lettuce, and I want to bring my point across. Then you might throw a grubby, rotten tomato at me, and that's fine. Let's have the discussions. Let's see what's good about subluxation and what's bad. There are bad things about subluxation. There's bad things about the germ theory going on right now. Mm-hmm. But the germ theory is okay by me, mm-hmm. Host, dose, response. Pretty good theory. It's good. Wash your hands and stay away from someone who's been in the dumpster. Mm-hmm. Right? So, yeah. But it's not everything. Mm. And that's the thing. Bring back some people who are speaking contrarian, liberally, also traditional values. Don't try and genericify, is that a word, the colleges into and then all these foreign students come in, they're paying big bucks. They're actually smart people. They're Chinese, they're Indians with high intelligence, but the universities allegedly only interested in their money. Why aren't we opening it up to brilliance? Hey, this kid was a prodigy. He's got no money, but we'll let him in. Stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe I'm ranting, but I think that gives you a little bit of where my head is at.
I think that there are some gems in there that a prospective student would hear you say all that and say to themselves, I really like that inclusivity. And at the same time, it's important that you stand for something in today's world, because as things begin to get more and more watered down over the next couple of years, it's going to be really cool to see how also the things that are standing strong, like a tree with really deep roots that are strong roots, will stand tall and stand out from the crowd. From what I'm witnessing or observing on these different campuses, there's little movements that are very subtle, and they're not necessarily embraced by the administrations and the schools themselves, but there is a strong student culture that really embraces the supplemental curriculum, and that really recognizes they're going to have to go outside of their classes if they want to learn chiropractic. And with that, like you said, it may not be called chiropractic in the future, although I believe it will, but people will be adjusting vertebral subluxations. People will be expanding the understanding that the general public has of the importance of looking after themselves and remaining connected to themselves, more deeply connected to themselves than what's out there. So I just say that to say I appreciate the perspectives that you're sharing. I think that you could probably go into detail on a number of different things that would really help an incoming student. But I think that the way you've kept it sort of, be a free thinker, but also be focused in your, be relentless in your pursuit of not only knowledge but experience. And I just appreciate the energy that you brought to this discussion today. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So, last question. If every student going into chiropractic school was to have a standard set for them that they couldn't necessarily enter chiropractic school until they met these new standards that we've created, what would we want to see in an incoming student? How many different observation hours? What types of books should they be exposing themselves to? What types of potential literature should they be reading, or different art should they be exposing themselves to?
The simple adage is, if you want to know where you're going, look where you've been. So you cannot, I mean, I remember looking at the history of physiotherapy in Australia. And if you look at the inaugural meeting of the Australian...
Pause. Hold on one sec. Sorry. I just realized.
You're okay, Ben. Yep. All good?
All good.
All right, from the top. The inaugural meeting of the Australian Physiotherapy Association consisted of massage therapists and chiropractors. So where did physiotherapy come from? This is not a criticism. This is to show that if you ask a physiotherapist that, can he tell you that? I don't think so. The other thing is, it's a big question what you've asked me, but I'll answer it this way. You go to the university and you sit there to take it all in. And you can sit there and take it all in. Now, that would be fine if all curricula and all programs were brilliant beyond measure. However, in reality, what you take in, how do I say this? What goes into the university, in other words, the students, enhances the university itself. So if you're getting a population of idiots dumbed down by whatever, it wouldn't matter what was at the university. So in a way, it's the safety pin cycle. You think of the university and the community. The university is really just reflecting the community. So what's going in there? In other words, what our society has raised is going to enhance whatever's coming out. So you could go in there and preach creationism or evolutionism or whatever. And if they've been raised a certain way, they're going to go, that stinks, I'm out of here. So what's the point? The point is that it's really our society as a whole that's guiding what goes on. And if society's not ready for the message of chiropractic, let's say we were really in trouble and you've got the magic pill, the magic bullet of what can cure everything, but they've somehow lapsed into this lazy, lackadaisical, I never knew that word before my American friend introduced me to that word. And God forbid an American should educate an Australian in grammar. Because there's another stereotype. Americans are dumb. They kind of, they don't know what's going on. And then I go to America and I get the best education and I meet the most intelligent people I've ever met. The most big-hearted people in the world are Americans. But this is America. It's the worst and the best of everything in the world. That's what I love about the United States of America. because America's the big thing. The United States of America is the worst and the best of everything. Hey, what about a university system, an education system that is the worst and the best of everything? And then, as a discerning individual, adult, young person, you decide what's good and bad, because it's all there and it's always going to be there. So there is no ideological thing. And that's why I will not speak for a college slanted towards this or that. I want a college that's eclectic, has from, what was his name? Winterstein, head of National College. I want to learn about what he said, because to Palmer graduates, he was the son of a gun. I was going to say bitch, but I won't say that. He was the enemy to Palmer people. But I want to know what he said, because he must have had something to say. So it's about the whole. And yes, I believe that the Palmers were onto the greatest thing, the Man's Gift to Man book. I think that was, I can't remember who wrote it, Marcus Bark, or that, he wrote the chiropractic story. Anyway, it's a great gift we have. But I want to be able to see, not be in, you see, if you teach all the students that the only thing that matters is the adjustment and the subluxation and the adjustment, and that's it, don't look anywhere else, they will naturally revolt anyway. They will naturally go into the negative side anyway. It's just human.
Right.
Because I'm being dictated to. So the worst thing about chiropractic is the best thing about chiropractic. But when you try and shove that philosophy down someone's neck and say, you shall only adjust C1, that's wrong too. So what I'm saying is that education is a complex thing, but it's what you bring into it is really what comes out of it.
I appreciate that. What I'm getting at is that the medical professions, in order to enter into their programs, have either an MCAT or a GRE. You have to have a certain amount of hours that you spend in a hospital or a clinical setting. You have to achieve a certain GPA. Most chiropractic schools are like letting people in with very few standards. And I'm not saying the standards need to be academic. I'm just saying that if we were to design some standards and we were to say, before you go to chiropractic school, we would really like you to spend some time on this, this, and this, what would they be, through the understanding that you have of all the years in practice, all the dedication into the academic and also the experiential, what is the education look like to you?
I hear you now. It's a great idea. Everything is quick fix now, even getting into a college. I just want to get in. I just want to get in and get out. So to get in, you would have to write an essay on philosophy. You would have to write an essay on the science behind chiropractic. I don't need fully referenced stuff. I don't need an academic rated paper. Tell me what you've looked at in the science. Tell me what you've observed in the art, and write a paper on these three things, and what you understand about philosophy. Then it's graded by, whoever the committee is on that particular institution. And also there used to be entrance interviews.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe New Zealand has them now still. They
still exist, and it's part of the onboarding process. It's definitely, like you said, it's an event-based situation where you apply, you check the boxes, and you either get in or you don't get in. It's not process-oriented like chiropractors live their lives through this recognition that life is a process, that when people come in and receive care, that there's a process you want them to begin to engage with. And so my hope is that pre-chiro can be this beginning of a process that allows somebody to start to take steps down the path to become a chiropractor one day, and shows them, hey, there's all of this that you have to explore to gain exposure to before you even apply and try and start dealing with that admissions process. Spend some time on what you just described. So if there was a science fair where you had young students that were on college campuses and in universities that have real research laboratories, if there was a science fair in the name of pre-chiro, what types of topics would you like to see students investigating? What types of journals would you like to see them connecting the dots on, so that they can show their fellow students that are maybe pre-physical therapy, pre-med, hey, I'm a pre-chiro student. these are my sciences, this is my philosophy, this is how I'm different. And we can begin to have young people represent before they're even chiropractors and have been indoctrinated by these different schools and the divisiveness that our profession has been continually propagating throughout the decades.
Well, I think that you've just presented a great framework, but each school has to then choose who its directors are that are going to, and it shouldn't come from one person. So in a way, what I say doesn't matter. What's important is that you have stated a framework that's really impressive. It's not done yet. Maybe some have done it, but if we got together some passionate chiropractors who could prove their worth in providing this guidance, then they should. And I think that's what I was saying before, is that a lot of the generic type schools here that are part of universities that are no longer free thinking, but just trying to prove that they can run a profit. The entrance process is completely heartless. Maybe that's a stronger word. It's based on just numbers and digits.
So
whereas what you're
clear, the motivations of the incoming students aren't really, they're not clear on why they're getting is it a bachelor's degree or a certification? What is
so it has no heart, it has no soul, it has no personification. It's like, oh, did you get 95 entrance score or 3.5? Did you get, I did. You need academic parameters, but what you're saying is, do you know what you're getting into? And for instance, if they answer, well, I'm here because I didn't get into physiotherapy, then you've got something to deal with, right? And I think that your process maybe, and they could have a 100% grade point average, but they're only here because they didn't get into blah, blah, blah. So, and that's what's happening in Australia. I was talking to an adorable young patient who I've known since she was born, and she came in the other day and she said, I've decided what I want to do. Oh, really? And one of the things she wants to do is study chiropractic. And I said, what's the entrance percentage for chiropractic? She said 80. And I said, well, that's pretty realistic. That's good. What's physiotherapy? She said 95. And anyone you talk to says, why does this physiotherapist need a 95? It's a popularity contest. It's not based on anything. Therefore, what Ben Glass is suggesting may have more merit than these points you need.
To be fair, I believe chiropractors are some of the hardest workers. They're some of the most driven people in the world. And our profession has continued to ask the wrong question of why we're not meeting the needs of the general public. We are not focused on the educated people of the world, which are in the school systems being fed this pre-physical therapy, this pre-medical education by people that have organizations with budgets built just to indoctrinate those students when they're in high school, when they're in middle school. Timmy, that back in 1918, 1906, something in the early 1900s, people weren't flossing or brushing their teeth. And so the dental profession created Timmy the Tooth to go into the elementary schools and teach the importance of flossing and talk about this word called plaque. And so they hired a marketing firm and really just dedicated themselves to educating the general public in the school system that if you have plaque, that you need to see a dentist. And now everybody sees dentists 100 years later. So I just want to say that chiropractors have said, hey, we have this idea. It's a great idea. Come and see how great of an idea it is. And don't get me wrong, we have the highest satisfaction out of any of the healthcare professions out there. People love us. People enjoy the experience of seeing us, but we haven't dedicated ourselves to the younger generations that are really at that stage of life where their brain is being so impressioned by, like, the impression that they get is so strong. And when I search in today's world, hashtag pre-med, I get over 75,000 posts. When I search hashtag pre-PT, I get over 100,000 posts. But when I search hashtag pre-Chiro, there's 75 posts. So my point is just that we have a lot of framing to do in regards to the questions that the profession is asking of itself. If we want to really reach the people that are making those decisions of, am I going to bring my family to see the chiropractor? Well, there was a chiropractor on my college campus, and he really helped me when I was younger. I obviously am familiar with it. And so, of course, I learned the importance of seeing a chiropractor, whether it's for stress relief, whether it's for alignment, because students' spines are just ridiculous these days, you know, with the laptops. I mean, we have all of these sort of left brain, educated brain concepts that feed and help and support the need to see sort of a, you know, an adjuster, but then we have that opportunity to meet them there and then bring them into the philosophy and show them this expanded context of life with the trust within the life without fear, so to speak, Fred Bard. So anyway, I'm ranting now, but I just wanted
You've
to
made
share.
me think of one thing, Ben. Has chiropractic found its plaque? Or as you say, plaque. Right? That might be something to think about. I won't answer it unless you want me to.
Well, what do
I'll
you
tackle
think?
anything.
What do you think that that carrot is that we can sort of dangle out there that's aligned with the roots, the origins that the profession is founded on and is built on? And
when I was in the media role for the Chiropractors Association here, I always had to think of answers that were not the word perfect, but unchallengeable. What's the word?
irrefutable.
They were
Irrefutable.
done. The irrefutable answer to the word "what is our plaque" is, well, one, if we have found it, we haven't promoted it like they did the dentists. Number two, I think it's really anything that's non-emergency and life-saving heroic care. And you think about that's a tough, because a lot of chiropractors are just treating back and neck pain. Me too. But when you think about our plaque, it's about, we love medicine, and I am the recipient of a little arterial graft on the left side of my heart. And the doctors did that for me while I lay there unconscious and my chest cracked open. Imagine having the trust to do that. Well, you got no choice when you were me in that position years ago. However, if you don't need something like that, you probably need to see a chiropractor. How you phrase that, I don't know. But our plaque is anything non-surgical, non-medic, life-saving medication you could basically treat with lifestyle. My own cardiologist says that lifestyle is the number one treatment. So can we niche the chiropractic lifestyle into that lifestyle? Then we've got something.
Right. Yeah, and I believe that the portal of entry wellness certifications, like your massage therapists, your yoga teachers, your personal trainers, your breath workers, your Feldenkrais professionals, all of them, if they want to take the next step and become a doctor in wellness, so to speak, then chiropractic is the clear path for health promotion. Obviously, that's not truly what this profession was intended to be. It's partly what it was grown to become, but at the end of the day, there's nothing out there that promotes health and is a portal of entry primary care doctor like a chiropractor. So,
and I will say one more thing, Ben, that within chiropractic, as we already do, then we need specialization. We need upper cervical specialists. We need SOT specialists or whatever. So within chiropractic, someone may choose just to specialize in C1, so be it. And that is a strength, not a weakness, because then that chiropractor will say, look, I think that your L5 disc may need some flexion distraction. Go and see George down the street.
Exactly. So chiropractors would work together more.
And yes. And I get referrals from other chiropractors, and I sent, I think, look, you want your curve back in your neck. It didn't work for us. You might want to see a CBT guy or gal.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Anyway, thank you. We could talk for hours.
Yeah.
I want to just acknowledge your time and thank you for your
Thank
time
you.
today.
Yep.
And
I'm always available for people. You know, I'm a human being. I don't live and breathe chiropractic like some say, but I tell you what, you know, 80-20. I'm an 80-20 chiropractor. 20% I do other stuff too.
Thank you, Joe. Keep doing your thing, man. I really
You too,
appreciate
Ben.
all the help you've provided of just when emails come in from other chiropractors and they're just there to support you, not try and sell you anything, but just offer information that might be interesting or stimulate a new thought. Your emails have been very helpful for me. So is there a way that people can get on that list? Is it by
I
invite?
would love you to get on that list. Just send me an email, joe@ierano.com or info@spine, spine.net.au. Info@spine, can you spell spine? I think so. .net.au, whereas my last name's a bit more difficult. Info@spine.net.au. I'll chuck you on there. And if, you know, Facebook's pretty ubiquitous, you can always find me there.
Excellent.